think the fundamental thing to be mindful of here, the way that I see it, is that, our human nature really does have two mindsets that are working opposite of each other. We have the human mindset on one side of it, which is our human nature. This incredible.
Ladies and gentlemen, Uncle Jeff is in the house. I am so excited, Dr. Jeff Spencer, of course, to welcome you to the podcast. You have been a mentor, a coach to me, a friend, and I'm really excited to be unpacking your wisdom and your experience, particularly around performance today. We're gonna have a really great conversation.
Well, that's my all-time favorite subject. So ready when you are.
Awesome. So let's start at the start. You have a very colorful, you're very decorated, you have a very colorful history, an extraordinary amount of value to unpack to our listeners, especially, our listeners come to the podcast, they want to learn how they can get better in, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, as a parent. And I think that you are going to, I'm going to make a prediction. I think you're going to over deliver in all of those categories. But I want to talk about how you came to be the person that you are today. And specifically, I want to go back to your origin story and your observations around your parents, in particular, your father, and what you observed around him and his life, how that shaped your thinking, your beliefs, and your behaviors.
Well, first off, my dad was an artistic genius that could command any price for his work, both as a fine artist, but also as an illustrator. I did get the artistic gene from him and my mom. My dad was really absorbed in his work, but it wasn't a malicious, it didn't feel an absence of him, in a sense that he was doing something that meant a lot to him. And I was a very independent, kid that just kind of followed the path of my inquiry. So it seemed to be a good fit. And I never grew up with the word can't, because I never heard it. So he was a bit of a non-entity, but I had access to watch him work because his studio was attached to our house. And I did have this exposure to the highest level of creativity, artistic design, etc. But I also saw something else, is that despite his talent and his will and what he could produce, he ultimately died homeless on the streets of New York City. That I found out about 30 years after the last time I saw him, when I was 13. So I learned a very valuable lesson there, is that will and talent are something, but they're not enough. And then what the saving grace of that was, is that I did have angels come into my life, two in particular, that showed me what a father should show me with my level of receptivity. And my first cycling coach was a 3-time Olympian, 5-time national champion. And he taught me how to win. He taught me the art and the skill of winning. He said, first, you're a human that needs to know how to succeed and learn that process. And then you become a great cyclist second. So I had a massive advantage because he crafted my mind on how exactly do I successfully engage, creating predictable and consistent and repeatable success in my life. And as a result of that, I did become an Olympian, which was an ambition that I had at the age of 7, even though I didn't know how I was going to do it. He was the force that made that happen. But also to say that there was another angel that came into my life when I was 18, and I was still 3 years away from becoming an Olympian. I was enrolled at the University of Southern California, where I was studying sports science. And simultaneously, this 76-year-old Victorian man came into my life, who I met through a neighbor when I was 18, that was a true Renaissance man. He was Emmy-winning author of a movie that was done about his creative philosophy. He was a trained university metallurgist. He was a war correspondent in World War I. He was a playwright, a poet, an author, truly a Renaissance man. And he chose me to be his apprentice in helping him create his glass art masterpieces. So it was a very unusual athlete now become artistic apprentice, which is an oddity in and of itself. Being apprentice at 18 to a 76-year-old master, there was this huge age disparity. But
Mm-hmm.
the value of this is that during the breaks that we took when I was assisting him on the weekends, he would play classical music to me. He would read to me poetry. He would share with me the great philosophers. And he said, I need to fill you up on this stuff, because he sensed I had a capacity for it, which I did. And that kind of nuanced side of myself, combined with the intellectual side that I was getting from university training, plus my preparation for the Olympics and my physicality, matched with the knowledge from my first mentor on how to win and succeed. When I had the self-starting gene, it created a very kind of potent cocktail that could step into and be successful at many different things. But had it not been for my father's genius and flaw, who knows what the path might have been.
Yeah, and it's interesting when we talk about, our parents, and of course, I mean, no child wants to know that their father died homeless in the on the street, even though they were an artistic genius. But you have to also thank them, like it's like the good with the bad, right? You have to thank them for the gift and the
Of
curse,
course.
because that's
Yeah.
how you were able to, you know, you can call this woo woo, manifest those mentors and have those wizards, along the way on
Yeah,
your hero's
truly.
journey, right? Yeah.
Well, I think we, for me, it was is that I realized that my parents were my age once, were my age once too.
Yeah.
And they had their own thoughts and they had their own vulnerabilities as a human, like we all do. And some of us are graced with finding a way out, some of us aren't. And the hand that we're dealt is elusive to try to figure out the why behind it. But just to say that I felt that I was extraordinarily lucky, because neither of my parents imposed a you can't. I'd never heard the word can't in my vocabulary.
Mhm.
So possibility, it never occurred to me that something wasn't possible or worthy of investigation and consideration.
So at what age did you start cycling?
I started when I was 10. When I was
Oh.
7, I wanted to become an Olympian. I thought that'd be cool. And then when I was 10, I showed some unusual ability on a bicycle,
Yeah,
and I realized, well, maybe this is how I'm going to do it. So that's how I formally started, my bicycle career.
nice. And so you make the Olympic team. You become a national champion at some point in the late 60s, I assume?
Yeah. I targeted when I was 11 in 1962. I decided it would be the 72 Olympics in Munich. That was my target. So
Man.
yeah, there were 10 years devoted to that process. Yep,
And then you are an Olympian for the and representing the US
that's correct.
in two sports. Yes, one is or not two sports, but one is
Two
tandem
different events.
cycling.
Yeah,
Yes, and one is the individual sprint.
right. Two different events. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little. First of all, I had no idea what tandem racing was. I had to look it up.
Yeah.
It's a
It's
death
terror. Sheer,
it's a
sheer.
death sentence.
It is sheer terror. I mean, seriously, you're traveling like 2 football fields in length in like 8 seconds.
With two people on a bike.
Yeah, you're going like 60 miles an hour. It's like you start to hear the bike start to break apart because it can't handle the loads and the power. It's like, please stay together, because if it doesn't, it means that I'm going to skid on this wooden track for 200 feet. And the only thing between me and the track is my skin.
Dead.
And I don't want to smell my skin
Yeah.
vaporizing, skidding it. It's not
Yeah.
my idea of fun. So yes.
Man. Yeah. So let's talk about your experience as an Olympian and the Munich Games. When we think about it, well, first let's talk about what it felt like to, or maybe you can describe your experience in terms of what it felt like for you to be, competing, for your country, the excitement, the nerves. Did you feel like, what was going on in your mind? Did you feel, I mean, this is the pinnacle of human achievement, right? It's like
Yeah.
being able to compete for your country at the Olympics. So what is happening for you as you arrive in Munich, as you see the Olympic Village and see your team, the US team that year?
Well, a couple of points to this I think are important is that when I was working as a kid in a bike shop, a guy came in wearing a T-shirt that said USA Olympic Team on it. He doesn't even remember wearing it, but I saw it and I said I wanted that. And the only way he could get it was to become an Olympian. So that became the logo that inspired me to stay in the game for 10 years because I wanted the T-shirt, and I thought it would be really cool to wear that T-shirt. And the Olympics is very tedious. People think, well, you gave up a lot. I think, what if you don't go for it, that's what you're giving up. I feel like they're the ones that are giving up something because they're spectators. And so it was easy
Right.
for me to do, but it was tenacious and it fit my mentality perfectly, where you're fully committed to do whatever it takes to get what has to get done.
Mhm.
And the reward of that is I can honestly say that I know what it's like to play at your full potential. And I can tell you that there's nothing more sublime or euphoric in the human experience is to experience your superhuman nature and the capability and potential of that. And when I experienced that, I kind of felt like an astronaut coming back from the moon, where you have this different perspective. You just can't relate to life like normal people do because the scaling of possibility becomes so amplified in its limitlessness that you just look at life in an entirely different way. I also, uh, being in the Olympics, felt an incredible debt of gratitude because coming from a welfare family, my parents could not have afforded me to do what had to get done to have a chance to become an Olympian. And it was the very generous contributions of the American public that enabled that to happen. So it was with a great debt of gratitude that I felt a different level of purpose to honor
Mhm.
everybody that played a role in this. And I realized that contribution and support does matter. And I learned that winning does matter. I feel that we have a moral obligation to perform at our highest level continuously as a way of honoring our talents and also honoring the giants that we stood on their shoulders to become what we could have been, that without them, it would have never happened. So I was very mindful of the reciprocity of holding up my end of the bargain. The competition is intense because you're going up against the best of the best, but you're there to test yourself out, to test how far you can go, and to test yourself against a possibility, which is a great metaphor for life in and of
For
itself.
Yes.
I mean, truly.
Yes.
The other thing is that I remember one morning getting up, going outside where I was staying in the Olympic Village, and there was a crowd um, amassing about 100 feet from me. So I went over there and I stood with the crowd, and this guy was pointing his finger up. And so I followed his finger up to a balcony, and there was a guy with a ski mask over his head. And then I learned that at 4:30 that morning, they're laid dead in that apartment. Three Israeli athletes that were murdered by Palestinian terrorists, literally like 100 yards from where I was. It was surreal. It didn't seem remotely possible to me that that could be conceivable at a celebration, but yet it was real. And I realized that when the armored vehicles were coming into the underground structures and the helicopters were showing up, and the athletes were not the athletes, but the military were rappelling out of the helicopters in sweatsuits, with machine guns. I mean, this is like the real deal. And it
This is
was
West
hard.
West Germany, right?
Yeah,
So that's
West Germany,
also
Munich.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
it's like to wrap my brains around that
Mm.
was really hard to do. And I knew that it was a moment in history that there was a shift in how business was now being done in certain like situations. So it took a while to get over that because the other 9 Israeli athletes that were taken to the airport for safe passage to get the terrorists out of Munich were loaded onto a helicopter, and a terrorist got nervous that was with the athletes in the helicopter and dropped a hand grenade on the floor and blew the helicopter up. So there were 9 kind of peers of mine that were splattered against the walls of the helicopter. That I was fortunately done competing at the time, but it's taken me a lifetime to try to figure that insanity out, where you had the best of humanity uh, concurrently mixing with the worst possible outcome of human decency that impacted me permanently, like forever. And so that was my experience. And so my take home is for everybody that, please take the time to give yourself the courtesy and have the courage to try to explore the limits of the possibilities that you consider for yourself, because it's a worthy cause. And I feel the rewards of what and how we honor uh, our humanness and our pass through this dimension is held in the balance of that. And there's only one of you in all of creation, and none of us are insignificant. And that would just be something that I would say to everybody,
Mhm.
that you explore the possibilities that occur to you without any reservation or hesitation.
Yeah, that's the big bloody stain on those Olympics, right? It's like athletes, they
Yeah.
come to compete, right? They come at peak performance.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
you know, the spirit of the Olympics is it doesn't matter what these artificial lines are in the sand that we call borders. You know, we're
Truly.
we're not here to make political statements. We're here to just
Truly.
celebrate humanity. And that's yeah, and there's a movie, I remember watching it many years ago. I think it's called Munich, that actually goes through the whole story.
If
Uh,
I could just share one thing here to
yes.
really punctuate that point, is that in the Olympic Village, they had a theater that all the athletes were welcome to come to at any point in time. And I remember I went in there and it was filled, and the athletes were in the aisles and standing up on chairs and each other's shoulders. It was packed with the different colors of the sweatsuits from the athletes from all over the world. And everybody was laughing their heads off in unison. And I finally felt what it was like to truly experience a world at peace with itself and in harmony. I mean, I honestly felt that.
Mm,
And what was so amazing about that is that the movie that was playing was Charlie Chaplin's masterpiece. Um, it was his masterpiece that was being played. I can't remember. Modern Times is what it was. There was a silent movie. So there wasn't a language barrier. It was just all the athletes understood what it was from how it was being portrayed, and we
mhm.
unified as a collective. And
Yeah,
so just imagine, you know, like me next to a Soviet athlete, and we were supposed to be at war with each other, but I
right.
never felt that. I just felt that this is just one amazing community, all colors, all creeds, all everything. But we experienced this thing, the singularity moment in human history, where I really understood what's possible when you can come together through a common bond or experience where everything else gets stripped away. One of the most profound experiences of my entire life.
Yeah, and that's why I think your story and your experience and your teaching is so important because you've had this concentrated microcosm of the best and the worst, right? The yin and the
Yes.
yang, the peak and
Yes.
the pit, all in one very short
Yes.
period of time. Yeah,
Very much so.
yeah. So what happened? So when you come home from the Olympics, so you check off the box, the 10-year goal. I'm an Olympian now for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I know at some point you become a chiropractor, but and I think you might have already had your master's in sports science at the
Yeah.
time, but
So here's the genesis. It's a little like when I got back, it was surreal. It's like part of me couldn't relate.
yeah,
It's like, well, my toast is cold. Well, so what? Just eat it anyhow. I mean, just the scaling of the human experience versus where I'd been,
yeah,
it bent my frame. It just changed my mind in a way that it was kind of difficult to kind of re-enter society again in a certain sense. But then I completed my undergraduate study. Then I finished graduate school with a master's degree in sports science. And then I started advising athletes that wanted to win gold medals and make millions of dollars as professionals. And I had business people come to me that wanted to become their own champions because they knew they needed to be a champion in business. So I started working with them. And then it was really interesting because the athletes said, well, I need to extend my career to create the best legacy possible. And the business people that were my clients, as I was helping them become their own champions and their own peak performers, they said, well, I don't want to be like my same age counterparts that are all dying of heart attacks and strokes in their early 40s. How do
Mhm.
I not do that? And that's when I decided to go back to school and get my primary licensure in the chiropractic profession, which I specialized in wellness care for the business people. I performed and specialized in acute trauma for the athletes. And so, with my Olympic experience, my academic knowledge of how to craft a body that can push and stay in the game over the long term, and how to get and stay well, I had this 360-degree full spectrum view of the people that I was dealing with that allowed me to craft personalized paths for individuals and teams to get from where they were to the pinnacle of their ability to perform, but also keep them there over the long term to amass a legacy of intense value, or perhaps to become iconic. And so that was kind of the trajectory and how that unfolded over the next 20 years. And I'll also kind of mention that the artwork that I was doing with the master that I met when I was 18, I developed my own side to that, and I ended up showing my art in the best galleries in New York City. So I was a very accomplished glass artist simultaneously with being an Olympic athlete while
And
advising these
doctor.
people becoming their own champions. So it's kind of
Wow.
an interesting mix that was what my life was made up of at that time.
And you know, you were also, you're not going to say it because I know you're too humble, but I will. You were recognized as one of the top sports chiropractors in the world.
It's true.
And I remember, so I've known you. I don't actually think I've ever told this to you before, but I went to chiropractic school, 1999 to 2003. That was my 4 years at CMCC. Um, and I remember knowing about you in my first year
Oh, you did?
because there was a chiropractor on the Tour de France team, and that was you. And I remember thinking, okay, this guy, like you were my hero, because at the time, like back then, and it's much more common now, but you had like the ATs, you had the athletic therapist, the physiotherapist, you had those
Hmm.
people on the team. It was more of a rarity back then to have a
Hmm.
chiropractor as on the medical team. So I
Yes.
remember thinking, okay, I don't know who this guy is, but I am going to emulate, I'm going to follow. Like, you were a legend to me. So I knew about you from when I was just an itty bitty, DC, little baby DC to be little student. And I knew, because I thought I was going to do my sports fellowship after, I had all the things mapped out. So I've been watching you for a while. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that we had the chance to meet and share these amazing experiences with each other. So,
Yeah.
thank you again for everything that we've shared thus far and those things yet to come.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your time on a tour. You coached how many tours? 8 or not? How many of them
Yeah,
were
I
you?
did 9. I was
Nine.
involved in 9 tours. Yep.
Yeah. And
Tour de
those
France's.
are it's like 23 days, just like weather and fatigue and injuries and mindset stuff. Like, how, and I know you were the chiropractor on the team, so of course you're going to be managing some of the physical ailments and things that come up, but any good chiropractor worth their salt is also going to be working on mindset with them,
Sure.
right? What
Yes.
what or how or how did you continue to keep the output of your um, athletes consistent to be at that high level? What were some of the things that you were able to impart with them in order for them to continue to punch out what they were punching out?
The tour it's a very complicated event because, as you said, it's like 23 days, 2,500 miles, rain or shine, sleet or snow. You put on your clothes and you go to work, and nobody cares. Your job is to show up and get the job done, whatever that takes. And I've always considered it the ultimate life clinic, because what you'll experience in 3 weeks, you'll experience in a lifetime. It's a great way to prepare for life. The riders show up at maybe 5% body fat. They leave like minus 20% body fat because they're losing so much weight. They're
God.
consuming 10,000 calories a day and they're like still losing weight.
Hmm.
And
Ultimate diet. It's the ultimate
it's the
diet.
ultimate diet. It's the ultimate
If you're
diet.
the Tour de France.
Eat whatever you want. You're still
Yeah.
losing weight, man. This is a dream. just a dream. So it fit my personality perfectly, but also I'll have to credit the management of the team that allowed me complete freedom to create the model of what's possible to care for the athletes in terms of their recovery and their preparation for every day's ride,
Mm,
because you wouldn't find that in most institutions. They're too steeped in tradition, they're too steeped in their histories, the hierarchy is too tight. So the elusive maybe 5% of possibility, you can't find through that because the structures are way too rigid. Where with the management that I work with, it's like, you know what you're doing, just do what you got to do and show up and let's just get the job done. So with that freedom, we were able to truly access things that most people didn't have the ingenuity to do, that both had clinical validation and scientific, vigorous validity to them. And to me, that was a dream come true for me because it allowed the model of the future to be created at that point that gave us a decided advantage on the recoveries and the preparation. And so, uh, with that freedom, there was also the human side of this, where riders are human first and then they're cyclists and athletes second. And while the athletic bodies are healing, then the person's mind as a human needs to be spoken to make sure that whatever has to get said to them to keep them in the game appropriately is addressed each and every day. And that's always shifting. And each of the riders has their own personality. And it was really my job to address that side of it, to keep them in the game, performing at their highest level mentally and physically. Huge responsibility, something that I was deeply passionate about. And for me, the evidence was conclusive that the elusive access to the percentages that trying harder can't get you to, it's a matter of ingenuity and finding ways to access those. We had the freedom, and that was displayed in the dominance that we showed in the 8 tours that we were victorious in.
mm,
Amazing experience for me. And it, again, taught me a lot about human nature and about human limits and how do we get beyond the limits and how do we say what to who when to stay in the game. There's a lot of mythology out there about what people think it really is to get to the top and stay there. And there's a lot of mythology in terms of mindset. If we're talking about ways of preparing the mind, I guess you could look at gratitude journals, you could look at positive thinking, affirmations that are like pre-preparatory for us that set a certain tone.
mhm.
But I think in real time, as we're meeting life head on, moment by moment, where real things are thrown at us, there has to be a champion's mindset that can recognize and respond to the challenges to avoid preventable problems and capitalize on best opportunities by having a state of readiness to step into the things that are probable. And so those are what I work on very well with the athletes, to make sure that we come from our champion self, not from our human nature fear-based self, because you cannot create excellence when you're driven by your fear impulses. You have to look at life through another different lens to do that. And that's what the champion mindset and what the champions have showed us.
So let's start unpacking that. So I know you have a framework that you work around called the Champions Blueprint, and it is there's a lot of mindset, there's a lot of team assembly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that there's several different steps that I'd like to unpack with you, if you're
Sure,
willing to do that.
100%. Let's do it.
Yeah, I say this because when you look at sport is a particularly good example of people with lots of natural ability, right? But there's only a few that sort of like you think of,
Mm-hmm.
the Michael Jordans in basketball and the Gretzky's or the Mario Lemieux in hockey, or I would say like the Lionel Messi or Ronaldo, and
Mm-hmm.
like when it's time to put the ball in the back of the net, like they do it, like it's when it's time to rise up,
Yep.
no matter what, they're consistent, they deliver, they punch it out, no matter what they're feeling. So let's walk through what it takes to be a champion. You said there's some preparatory things like meditations and affirmations, which, if I'm reading between the lines, you're like, that's a little bit too soft for your liking. There's a little bit more of a strategic and systematic approach that you like to dive into when you're creating a really big goal.
Yeah, there's really actually a biology to it. And again, just deep appreciation for the gratitude journals and the affirmations and positive thinking. But to just say that those are sort of passive things that are done in the privacy of your own experience.
Hmm.
But when you engage life as it really is, like in combat, in daily life, there has to be the ability to recognize and respond to whatever that is that's in real present time, to transcend it, to be able to
Yeah.
achieve that which you do that honors your talents.
Hmm.
I think the fundamental thing to be mindful of here, the way that I see it, is that, our human nature really does have two mindsets that are working opposite of each other. We have the human mindset on one side of it, which is our human nature, that's incredibly predictable. But our human nature is something we can't shut off because it's biologically encoded to our DNA. And when we look at that, there are several different beliefs that fall in line with that. And those being fear-based responses to life, they cannot take us to excellence because they're not based on excellence, they're based on survival. And survival demands immediate response to things to get out of harm's way, many times faster than we can think. But that's not how we create our greatness or create excellence. For example, have you ever said anything that seemed really right at the time, and then you said it faster than you could think, and when it came out, it didn't work so well?
Never. I don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking
never, of course. Well, you're the exception, of course, to the other 7 billion people on this planet. But I think we all know, like, well, where did that come from?
Yeah.
I mean, that was clearly a defensive response that was survival based because it just destroyed a relationship and it didn't
Right.
have to, but
Right.
man, did it seem right at the time.
Hmm.
So clearly there's something there that recognizes faster than we could think the ability to respond. For example, let's say you step on some ice and you slip. Well, your hand knows where to put it to break the fall,
Right.
but
Right.
you couldn't think fast enough to put your hand there. So again,
Hmm.
clearly something is listening faster than we could think. And so those are our survival impulses. And survival is about survival. It's not about excellence. Survival doesn't care about your gold medal, doesn't care about your greatness. It only cares about survival. But it does get first dibs at every moment of our life. It's the first filter. The problem is that it can only repeat history. It can't make it. So we're trapped in it. But the good news is that in opposition to our human mindset, we have our champions mindset, which is calibrated towards excellence. There is something within us that wants to create a life of contribution and value and
Hmm.
does want to give back. I was talking with a client today, and when we were doing our initial intake, he said, I know that I'm capable of more. I want more. I'm underperforming. How do I get there and fulfill my potential? So he clearly knows and wants his highest demonstration of self. He just doesn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
So we have these two opposing forces that are battling with each other 24 hours a day for control over our thinking. Human nature wants survival. Champion's nature doesn't get first dibs, but it does have final say, and it's the only way that we can create history. So let's look at a practical example. So let's say you're given an opportunity. Your fear-based survival human nature is going to say, what do I stand to lose here? I don't know
Hmm.
if I want to do this. I'm defensive. I don't want to hug.
I could
I'm going to
fail.
hoard. I'm
Yeah.
not going to share. It isn't going to happen.
Mm.
Well, champions don't think like that. That's human nature. That's our default. Can't turn it off. Our champion's nature is, no, what do I stand to gain here? There's plenty enough opportunity for success for everybody. Should I engage this, and what do I stand to gain? What will the benefits be? Optimistic, sharing, wants to hug, expansion in the lungs. So you can see the contrast.
Yeah.
So let's say you're given an accountability. What's the first thing the human nature is going to say? Well, I'm doing my best. So they've already decided what the limits is without even trying it. where a champion would never say that. Given an opportunity, given an accountability, they would say, well, actually, I'll find a way. Why do you think
Mhm.
I'm given creativity, ingenuity, and insight and curiosity? It's to find a way. So again, you can see the contrast here, and we could go through a couple of others. I think, like for example, I helped a guy win a gold medal because he was in conflict and melting down 2.5 weeks before the Olympic final, and his federation called me in to help him. And I talked with them, and I said, here's the problem, is that you and your team think you've got to be perfect to win a gold medal. Doesn't that sound right? If you're perfect, you're going to win a gold medal. That's what human nature thinks. But that's not what history tells us. So what I told him is that the problem with thinking that you need to be perfect is that you're making a contingency for every detail, but your brain is always going to make up another detail that you think that you need to find to be able to be perfect that you're not going to find. Therefore, you've already lost. And that's your survival instinct, your fear telling you this. It's not real. I said, what the champions do is that they focus on the two things that have to go right. So for you to win the gold medal, two things: don't change your warm up, do your first 4 steps to get your foot on the board where it needs to be to get the lift and win. That's how you win the gold medal. You're not trying to be perfect. You're doing the two things that have to go right to win. 2 weeks later, presto, instant gold medal. So there's this tug of war that we all experience, the anxiety of life. Should we or shouldn't we? That's how we're experiencing the struggle between our human and our champion's nature. And unless we overcome our human nature to become, I guess, superhuman in a certain sense by taking certain actions that have been demonstrated by prolific achievers to take us to the promised land, we can never live a life of passion, purpose, productivity, or prosperity. It's not possible. And so to me, that's one of the first places to start in gaining access to our potential to clear the way beyond the mythology that keeps us stuck, that can't deliver us into a life of excellence. Can't get there.
That's so great. And what you're saying, implicit in what you're saying, is that it's about, you know, becoming comfortable with the fears and the voices that you have in your head and doing it anyway, and having the trust and acceptance that the training that you've done up until the moment of performance, whether that's getting up on a stage or that's getting up in front of 100,000 people and running, a 100-meter dash or whatever. It's around knowing, sticking to the routine, which I think is, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I find that one of the things that really distracts from achievement is like shiny blinky, like here's a new thing that's going to get you here, and here's a new thing, and then you just are just pulled
Correct.
wherever the shiny blinky object is flashing. And when you have a template, like you're talking about, when you have this template for, this is how I'm going to behave, this is how I'm going to act, uh, I'm going to practice self-agency, I depend on myself, and I'm going to get rid of all the excuses, like you were saying, like I'm doing my best and what do I stand to lose? Like these are all kind of like scarcity, very uh it's based in lack, right? When we
Yeah, it's
move into
human
that
nature.
yeah, that human nature,
Human
exactly.
nature.
When we move into
You,
that
you can't.
champion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't escape it, and that's turned on 24 hours a day. That's our biology. You
yeah,
can't escape it.
yeah,
And as you said, you don't have to get rid of human nature to do what has to go right to succeed. But that's another myth. Our human nature wants to make us feel that unless it's quiet, we can't move forward. That's not
yeah,
true.
yeah,
This can be whirling and telling you all sorts of stories, but as long as you do this, then you can get your gold medal. But unless we have a model that we can look at to understand the process that's happening within us, then what happens is, I think we've all heard of the imposter, correct? Imposter syndrome.
yes,
Well, I want to tell you what I think the real imposter syndrome is. The real imposter syndrome is our human nature that we identify as us, because that's not us. That's the survival instinct side of us that we didn't ask for. That's part of our biology.
hmm,
But the real us is the one that wants to create a difference. And so once we learn the vocabulary of how excellence is achieved and we apply that, that's the only way that we can put this into the background, because we can't shut this off. Neither does this have to be silent for us to do what has to go right. So also, as you said, Stephanie, correctly, is that the champion's golden rule is you do the homework and the test is easy.
Yeah.
When you perform well and you have evidence in your preparation that you can do it, well, then you just have to do it when it comes time to doing it for real, when it counts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trained discipline that we have to train ourselves into, because that doesn't come naturally. Remember, fear, impulse is human nature. And so when we have something important that needs to be executed, then that importance creates fear
Mm-hmm.
that holds us hostage and jacks with our timing, where all we need to do is execute this as we did in our preparation to transcend our human-based survival impulses. And that's kind of the secret. If we haven't prepared and we don't have evidence, then you can't trust something that you don't have evidence of. And
Right.
that's why preparation is really everything.
Right.
Where kind of the mantra and goal achievement is you don't need to prepare, just make it up as you go. Well, again, that's mythology. That's part of the pop culture vernacular right now that's enticing to the human nature because it offers a shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
But the champion side of us knows that it is truly about the preparation, because will and talent aren't enough. It's all about discipline and readiness.
And I have to say, this came in. So I was talking to you. We were talking. You were helping me during a time when I was navigating closing my clinic, which was emotionally very difficult. But at the same time, I was also scheduled to be on my first sort of big documentary with Dr. Mark Hyman. I was going to be on his Broken Brain docu-series. And I remember you coaching me. You're like, you just have to nail the first sentence. Like once you
That's
just get, like you just said, like you got to get the first 4 steps and then don't
it.
change your warm up. And, you're like, just like say, hi, I'm Dr. Stephanie. And like, once you do that, then you're off and running. And I remember like sitting down for the interview and like, okay, just like, I got to get out like the first, once I just get that first thing out, like I was
That's it.
so,
Yep.
I was nervous, but I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill this. I'm going to crush this. And I remember at the end of the interview, the interviewer was like, that was just so excellent. Like you just, and I remember the next time I got on the
You
phone
did,
with you,
man. It was the
I was,
best.
I was telling you, I was like, I did it. And I
The
was so good. And
best.
I'm so proud of myself. And thank you so much. But it was,
Supposed to happen.
yeah. But you said, because I remember saying to you, I felt so calm after the interview. And you're like, of course you felt calm because you prepared. Like it's like you
Yep.
only get this ecstatic, like, oh my God, if you were like, oh my God, look what I got away with,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you were preparing
That's
and you
well
did
said.
it.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to
All right.
go. Now that was epic.
Yeah.
Absolutely epic.
It was so great. It was a highlight. And I had said, and I've been asked to come, on many documentaries since then, but that was sort of the first one where I was like, okay, the homework, when you do the homework, the test
Test
is
is
easy.
easy. You
Yeah.
got it. Yep.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So so we've been talking a little bit about mindset. That's one part of the blueprint.
Yes.
I think we skipped over legacy. Do we want to touch back there before moving forward?
Well, I think just a couple things maybe I'll say
Sure.
just to
Yes.
sort of zoom in on a few things here. I think that, when we're talking about the goal achievement roadmap, which is the goal achievement program that I've created, really you want to make sure that you have the right goal. We have big, hairy, audacious goals. We have moonshots. We have small goals. We have average goals. We have smart goals. But I think the most important goal that we need is the right goal,
Mhm.
because when we have the right goal, it aligns our mind, body, and soul. And when that happens, it gives us a very special type of focus that I have trademarked GOCUS, where goal focus, GOCUS,
I
where we
like
can
that.
concentrate on getting stuff done to move forward towards goal completion
Mhm.
while having simultaneous total peripheral vision, where we can see better options starting to occur in our periphery. And we can also see blind sides starting to form that we can eliminate before they manifest. So
Mhm.
right goals, extraordinarily important. Again, mindset, plays its role like we've talked about. I think another side to this that's really important is that we have a deliberate starting procedure when our preparation's done. And now we've made the decision to actively begin pursuing our goal. We have to have a very deliberate starting process that allows us to gain immediate traction to move forward. Because if we trip out of the gate because we don't have a starting process, that can derail a lot of things, and it can create a shaken confidence. So, having a really good start procedure is really important. I also feel that it's important that we recognize that there are some things that we'll encounter along the path to goal completion that may want to make us talk ourselves out of continuing, but they're actually signs of progress. For example, like
Hmm.
when we start, we're all enthusiastic, and then our initial enthusiasm drops a little bit. Then we think, well, gosh, I don't have the enthusiasm I originally had. Therefore, maybe I shouldn't do this because it means I'm not excited about what I'm doing. Therefore, I can't complete it. And that's another human nature myth. That's a complete lie. What do we know about all honeymoons?
They
Well,
almost
they all
come to
wear
an
off, right? We know that. They all wear off.
end.
And so it's exactly the same thing when we're pursuing a goal and the original excitement falls off.
Mhm.
That's actually a sign of progress.
That's also just your dopamine not like
No,
firing
it's
like crazy,
it's
right? Like, yeah,
it's whatever. Okay, call it
yeah.
what you want. But I mean, the reality of this is that if you get to a place where, which you will, the enthusiasm drops, it's supposed to,
Mm.
because now you're getting into the rhythm and the pacing of everything. Things have settled down. You're in a steady state now. That's a sign of evidence that you're making progress. So let's make sure we don't misinterpret that. Another area that we need to look at is what I call the daily grind. The daily grind is that point in goal pursuit where you're not thinking you're getting nearly enough back for the time and effort that you're putting into what you're doing. And you think about, well, maybe I should quit while I'm ahead because I'm not liking where I am. This is not any fun. But the trick is that every goal of any substance has got to have a daily grind component to it, because this is where we're developing our street toughness for doing that which has to go right specific to the goal that we're pursuing. But you can't really do that to the full extent in preparation. It has to be battle hardening in the heat of the battle itself. And this is where a lot of people, when they encounter that resistance, it's difficult. This is where they quit. And it's only because they haven't been advised that this is supposed to happen, because there is a promise with the daily grind is if you know how to get through it and you don't talk yourself out of it, and there are some deliberate strategies in the program that I put together that if you follow, the promise is you'll wake up one day believing that you could do it. And so you just got to learn how to stay in the game long enough to not talk yourself out of it. As a matter of fact, I work with Hitachi. Hitachi is a multi-billion-dollar company. It's like the big boys, like one of the top 30 corporations in the world. And I came in and worked with their executive committee when they were going through a company-wide transformation where everything was on the line. And they said, what do we do here? And I kind of look at the roadmap and I said, there's two things we got to do. We got to get your mindset straight so you know how to remain a champion in this process. And I need to show you how to get through the daily grind so that you guys as a team stay together to get to a point where you believe it's going to happen. And so that literally the value of that was billions of dollars to them to interpret correctly that at a certain point in an ambitious goal, you have to expect that it's going to be hard and make sure that you interpret it correctly. And sure enough, boom, they got up one day and everybody believed that they could do it. And they went on to make that company transformation.
Mhm.
So I think that that's critical. And maybe one other thing I'll say here, and then I'll turn this back to you, is that we got to finish the job. And a lot of times what happens when people believe that they can do it, then they can't finish the job. And the reason why that happens is they think that just because they believe they can do it, the hard work's over.
They've
And
done it. Yeah.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
somehow the plane's going to just land itself at the airport,
Mm.
but it's not like that. We still have a couple of more steps to go. And so what I'm saying here is that when you know that you can do it, do not try to rush to get to the finish line, because a lot of people either are really excited to get the chocolate cake, once they achieve the goal.
The post on social, "I did it."
That's exactly right, man. I
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
And or they believe that if they don't get it, somebody will be the first to post on social, and you
Mm.
spend all this time to get there, and you're second in line. And so all of this tempts us, and all of this is mythology, of course. And where does that mythology come from? It comes from our human nature. Our
Yeah.
human nature is not our friend. It tells us stuff that isn't real,
Hmm.
that appeals to our survival self, but it can't deliver excellence. Once again, the key to this is that when you're kind of getting back to the barn here, so to speak, and you can kind of taste the finish line, don't speed up. If you're in an airplane, does the pilot actually speed up on the final approach to get the plane on the ground faster? No. They slow the plane down, they kind of tip the wings, they just make sure they get it on the ground safely the first time without rushing. So if you trip before the finish line, then you don't finish. If you don't finish, you don't win. So my advice is that when you feel a sense of urgency nearing completion, slow down and just make sure that you're respecting your timing and that you have a very consistent pacing of checking off the last few things that have to go right to get you on the ground safely into the winner's circle. So those are some of the bigger things that are inherent in my goal achievement roadmap program.
It's genius. That I mean that and that's really what, kind of coming back to how you've helped me. That was really how you helped me transition out of clinic in a way that I can look back now and say, I am so happy
I'm
about
so glad.
how that happened. Cause and when you think about like having the right goal, like when I was thinking about closing the clinic, it was like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 16 years. It makes so much money. Like, what am I doing? Why do I feel called to do this other thing? What's wrong with why can I ignore that?" And so but when you decide, like for me, my human nature, to use your terminology, when I had emotionally decided, okay, I do need to check, like I'm checked out of this, like I don't want to be in physical practice anymore. There is that that sense of urgency, like, okay, now that I've actually decided, now I want to get out of it. Now I want to
Hmm.
be out. And you really helped me. I went on to, like, the clinic was still kind of going for like another 6 or 7 months,
Yeah,
and still being able to hold space for my patients and run the business the way that I should, and support my employees and all that kind of stuff. Even though I was hurting, I mean, I was going home and crying every night, but like at the clinic, no one knew that.
of course.
And that's really what you're talking about. It's like you want to really make sure that you slow everything down before you cross
Yes.
the finish line in order to do the job right, so you don't crash and burn.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. As a matter of fact, I actually wrote a paper on that called "How Not to Blow It Just Before You Win,"
Yeah.
and just maybe your audience might be interested in that. If you'd like to actually
I'd
get
love that.
that paper that I wrote, "How Not to Blow It Just Before You Win,"
Mhm.
you could actually go to www.drjeffspencer.com / the number one, like DRJEFF
Mhm.
SPENCER.com
Mhm.
/ and the number one.
Mhm.
That'll take you to that PDF. And
Okay.
while you're waiting for that paper to come back to you, there will be a video that shares with you a little bit about the goal achievement roadmap that might be just a great introduction for you. So just know that that's available.
Awesome. I'll make sure that that's in the show notes as
Great.
well.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So now we have the right goal. We have the right intention, the right mindset. We know that we have a start process. We
Hmm.
know that there is going to be, we're not going to, choke right before the finish line. Can we dive a little deeper into the goal achievement roadmap or the champion's blueprint?
Sure. Whatever you'd like. You tell me where you'd like to go, and I would be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, I'd love for you to describe some of the steps that are involved in it. I know it's sort of divided into like planning and preparation and then and
Sure,
kind of
sure,
going. Yeah.
sure, sure. So why don't we just do an overview of this? So
Yeah.
let's say that, okay, I want to pursue a goal here. So I have this idea that I want to pursue. So how exactly do I do that? Well, the first thing is that we want to prepare well to make sure that we're prepared before we start. So first key here, preparation precedes active pursuit of goal. And when we talk about preparation, history has revealed to me by looking at the evidence of kind of what I've seen over the last 50 years is that there's like 5 steps that are important to go through systematically that will confirm to you that you are ready to start. And why that's important is that if you have confirmation because you've gone through a process to confirm that you're ready to start, then there's no apprehension to starting. You just now only one thing left to do, and that's to push the go button and now actively begin pursuing the goal. In preparation, the first step is clarity. Want to make sure that you're really clear on what the goal is to make sure it's the right goal. Again, when you have the right goal, it aligns your mind, body, and soul. And when those are aligned, you have a very unique type of focus called GOCUS, trademarked word, goal focus,
TM.
that allows you to focus on the things in front of you, hyper focus to get stuff done to achieve the goal, but it also gives you peripheral vision to see better options occur and also blind sides starting to form that you can eliminate so they don't take you out of the game. The next thing in preparation is motive. It's really a good idea to ask ourselves, like, why am I doing this? Because when we look at the whys and the reason behind what we're doing, and we objectively really look at it, when we know that we have the right reasons for doing it, what that does, that gives us drive. It gives us, like, I can do this. It gives us an extra energy pack to stay in the game. And certainly we can all agree that to be able to live a life of passion, we have to manifest, and we manifest by having the power to get the stuff done to be able to complete our goals. The third step in preparation is impact. To really look at the impact of our achieved goals on ourselves, on others, on our legacy, and the world that we live in. And why looking at the impact in advance of pursuing it is that when we see the impact of it, it gives us a different purpose in the pursuit and the achievement of the goal itself, because it not only elevates us and gives us credibility, it also enhances the quality of other people's lives experience and their life quality. It also amplifies our legacy. That's something that will be on the human record for all of eternity for people to look at, that represents us in our absence, about what we did with our time and our talents. And ideally, this should be something that people want to emulate, not steer away from. But that's a choice that we make. And certainly understanding impact of the achieved goal goes a long way towards that. We did talk about mindset, and we talked about mindset within the context that we have the champion's mindset that overrides the human mindset, because the champion's mindset's the only way that we can create excellence, and we can't shut off our human mindset. We can only supersede it by doing the things that champions do in terms of their thinking to advance towards goal completion. Taken as a sum total, what the champion's mindset gives us is courage, the rarest of all human attributes. And when we look at the definition of courage, we're talking about the ability to take action despite our survival impulses, one of the hardest things ever. And then the final step, the fifth step in preparation before we actively begin pursuing the goal, is resources. Before we start, we want to make sure that we have adequate time and energy, knowledge and skills, team, materials and supplies, and also that we have the right map. And when our time and effort confirm that we're properly prepared, then we trust our ability to actively begin pursuing the goal. And then that's where we then start the performance side of the process to achieve our goal, which again is made up of 5 steps. So again, first we prepare with 5 steps, then we perform with 5 steps. The first step in performance is start. You've got to have a start procedure where you don't trip out of the gate. If you trip out of the gate because you bobble it, then you're going to get left behind. So we have a deliberate starting procedure that's rehearsed, so that when we push the go button, the synchronicity of what has to go right does, to achieve what I call a liftoff, which is the first measurable sign of goal progress.
What's an
And the
example of
reason
a
why,
start? What's an example of a starting procedure?
yeah, so a starting procedure. So let's say that my daughter wants to bake a cake. So before we start, let's make sure that we understand that we need to get the oven preheated. And then when the oven's preheated, we open the door and we stick the cake pan with the cake batter in it on the shelf, and we make sure that we hold the shelf with one of those little heating pads to not burn our hand, and we close the door as quickly as possible. So once the door is shut and then we look through the window, we can see the cake in the pan in there. Well, that means that we have the first visible sign that the actual baking of the cake is in process.
Mhm,
For
mhm,
me becoming an Olympian, I needed to win a local race as a 10-year-old first to tell everybody that I was actually serious about this. If you want to do a podcast, that a liftoff would be, let's say, the first time you choose your icon, and now you have it listed with, like, let's say, iTunes. Well, that's evidence that this is real. So there has to be something that tells us that this is no longer theoretical or we're just talking about it. We're
mhm.
actually doing it, and there's evidence of that.
Got it.
You know what it's like. Let's say you want to write a book. So when you do the first table of contents, you look at it. Well, that's evidence. It's not the book finished yet, but
Mhm,
it's evidence. This is tangible. Like, I'm going to do this. You see that? That means I'm doing it.
mhm,
And you notice how that changes you intellectually in what people think about you. It's not just Jeff thinking another crazy idea like the Olympics. But once people thought, oh, he's a cute little kid, isn't he? Just thinking about the Olympics at 7. Oh, isn't he just cute? But then when they realize, wait a minute, he just won a trophy here. You know what? He's going to do it. It made it real to them. It made it real to me.
mhm,
So that's why that's important. Then the next step is, and this is sort of seductive, because when you have your liftoff, that first sign that you're actually doing it, then people think, well, this is going to be easy now. We just need to keep executing the plan and we're going to get there. It doesn't exactly work like that, because with an initial success too early, it's really easy to overspend, get sloppy with your schedule, to not adhere to policy, because our brain thinks that we're already euphoric because we've already achieved our goal when we're just getting started.
mhm,
And so what happens is that the honeymoon falls off. Then we may have to do a reality check. And this may be where we quit, because we think that since something went wrong because our enthusiasm dropped, it means we can't do it. But if we know that this is coming and you tell your team, then they're not taken by surprise. And they look at Stephanie as a genius because she said that this was coming and we didn't believe it because we didn't really even think about it. But now that she's demonstrated it, she's the person we want to follow forever because she's a great leader. And then we talked about the daily grind. You're putting all this time and effort into it, and you're not getting anything close back to what you think you deserve. It's like, this is terrible. You can always tell because people's language gets short, kind of throw their bag on the ground. They screech their car out of the driveway. When you ask them how'd it go, it's all right. Is everything okay? And they, yes. You could tell that they're frustrated. That's a good sign because it means you're in the daily grind. As long as you're frustrated, you're still in the game. You haven't given up yet. But we have to be mindful that the daily grind is an important part of every aspirational goal. And if you're not willing to confront it, then just go for small goals and just live a life of mediocrity, because any goal of substance, there's going to be a daily grind in it. And let's just be really clear about that. Most people, they don't want to prepare. They'll start and then they want to finish. They don't want to prepare well. They don't want to go through the daily grind. They just want to get, to the chocolate cake in the winner's circle. It doesn't work like that. And so if we understand that, then we don't talk ourselves out of it, and we can keep our team in the game because we can tell them what's coming. It's like we're our own worst enemy because of the stories that we tell ourselves. Oh, it's getting hard, therefore I can't do it. That's human nature. What do you mean you can't do it? It's supposed to be hard. That's how you're developing your skill and your resiliency
yeah,
and your toughness to stay in the game. Don't be impulsive trying to finish. Don't trip. Slow it down. Make sure you get to the terminal and deplane safely. All this mythology. So those are really like the 5 steps in preparation and in performance. And here's another thing I'll say is that, you may only need 2 steps. Hitachi needed 2 steps: mindset, daily grind. Somebody I know that couldn't start, they spent too much time preparation. They need step 5 resources and step 6 start. They just needed to get that cleared up.
mhm,
Don't worry about the other 8, you know? So again, it's not 10 steps that you have to go through if you don't need to. But you do need a process, because if we look at the traditional goal achievement model, it's big, hairy, audacious goal, just determined to work harder than anybody else, and want it bad enough, and have a detailed plan, keep working harder, don't give up, stay in the game, believe, and you'll get there. And I know that that's not true. You may get there on a smaller goal, but you're not going to be able to create your bigger goals because it can't take you there. There has to be another level of readiness that allows us to get there. Just because we want it bad enough, things don't backfill. We
Right.
have to have the real skills to be able to shuttle the process along from one step to the next. So I just feel like when we're clear that goal selection is not, or goal setting is not goal achievement, they're two different things
Mhm.
completely.
Yeah, I like the nuances in your framework a lot because you're right. We do hear that a lot. It's like, you're just gonna want it better than anyone else. And if you want it, if you're
Mhm.
hungry, I mean, certainly you have to have hunger, right? Like that,
Absolutely right.
you
Right.
have to have the hunger and the willpower and the discipline to see it through. And you have to
Absolutely. Absolutely.
fall in love with the monotony of the daily grind. Like you have to, you
If
have
I
to fall in
must,
love with it.
if I must.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the messaging really is put your head down, no matter, but there's all these different psychological components to it, what you've been talking about, where
Correct.
having a
Yeah.
starting rhythm, and when you get into the daily grind and the effort doesn't match the outcome, what happens to our mindset and where we go, and the attractiveness of quitting, starts to increase. So I love that you've incorporated all of the different, like the champions mindset, and so you have the champions mindset, but we always have to understand that it's like Thelma and Louise, right? Like they're
Always, man. The boogeyman's always there.
yeah,
Totally.
always, which is so powerful and useful. um and I wanted to parse this with a discussion around parenting. We've talked about this offline, when we've had the opportunity to see each other, um, and you've shared, how your parenting of your daughter has really been, in your words, harder than the Olympics, right? It's been harder than
By a factor of a
than
thousand. Yeah.
yeah, and when you meet your daughter, she's gorgeous, she's beaming, she's happy, she's attentive, like she's worked at Giovanni's
Yeah.
events before. Like she's a joy. Like she is living, breathing joy in the somatic form.
Yeah. Ooh,
But it
good
wasn't
words.
like, yeah, maybe you can share a little bit about your experience with her, and even just looking at this goal achievement roadmap, how that has helped you, if at all, in your quest for being a champion parent.
Well, thank you. Actually, the goal achievement roadmap kept us in the game. Just to kind of set the stage for this is that we did and we're called to consider adoption. There are certain things that occur to you in life that just kind of won't let go. And we did then actively pursue a goal, and we decided that we would ultimately pursue an adoption in Colombia for a variety of different reasons. And we were, after very tedious period of paperwork and vetting and all this stuff, we were uh, confirmed to be who we said we were, and then we were matched with a child up for adoption. And she was 10 at the time, and 10 is a very challenging age, and most people don't want to deal with older kids because of the terrible behavior problems that are encountered, so much so that most people at the end of the year give the kid back because they can't take it, and then they get divorced. It's so disruptive.
Mhm.
And I was certainly aware of that, but that's not where I took my cues from. I took my cues from, is there a resonance between me and the process? And what is my belief and connection with whether we should or shouldn't do this? It's kind of a different way of making decisions. It does have an intellectual component where you do look at the pros and cons of it, but at a certain point, you have to go with instinct. And uh, we went to Colombia, and we spent 6 weeks with her there. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, which is like a trial run, then you decide, whether you're going to adopt or not adopt, and everybody votes on it. And we adopted, and she went through with the adoption. And when we brought her back to America, then we really saw what we were up against. meaning that she didn't speak English, we didn't speak Spanish. There was no language. So it all started with, primitive sign language. There was
Mhm.
no one there to guide us, and she had no school. And just imagine being 10 and coming to America or Canada, wherever you may be,
Mhm.
and you have no school. And everybody since the age of 1 has been talking about what their graduate school they're going to go to is.
Right, right. The parenting
So
Olympics.
what are you
Yeah.
going to do?
Yeah, yeah.
So what are you
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
do? And then she had severe PTSD and ADHD from the severe mental and physical trauma that she was exposed to for a minimum of 5 years, being bounced around through the foster care system in rural Colombia, not to mention the abuse that she endured prior to that in her own little village. So there was a severe history of trauma there that manifests itself in different ways. And she had a parasitic ridden body, little distended abdomen, almost lost her teeth. It was really tragic, severe malnutrition for 10 years because of the just abject poverty that she grew up with. And so I realized immediately that this was not an average situation here. And our aspiration wasn't to just save a child, but to manifest the potential.
Mm.
And because of my uh, Olympic disposition, I couldn't be anything other than a gold medal father to her, because we asked her into our world, and our world is about winning your gold medal. And uh, I felt, as my wife did, that we need to finish the job here, whatever that means, however long it takes. And so I made the decision that uh, starting tomorrow, uh, my job and my income will be cut 90% so that I can be the father that she deserves. There was no reservation or hesitation about that, because in the Olympics, as an Olympian, you got to do what you got to do to have a chance to win your gold medal. There's no negotiations on certain things that are just given that you got to do. And to say the least, it was difficult. My wife cried every day for 9 years and 9 months. It was so difficult. Um, the lying, the cheating, the deceit, the abject behavior, uh, defiance was just unbelievable. But the most important thing about this is that I never thought that that was her, because she didn't ask for that. She was and could have been a great kid without that, but yet how people showed up for her imposed upon her something that nobody should impose upon anybody under any given set of circumstances, that we eventually, that becomes the lens that we look at life through. So I never held her personally responsible for that. And I always felt that her soul wasn't tampered with, even though there were these overt behavior uh, circumstances and behaviors that I had to experience day in and day out, that was massively disruptive. But what I'll say to you is that um, through all of that, and the steadfastness of my wife and myself, and our commitment to the vigilance to be the parents that she deserved, um, I'm proud to say right now she just completed her junior year in college, which is really its own miracle when you think about it. And so I can only say that this has been the most profound experience of my entire life, because it was the most difficult by far. I mean, the Olympics, my odds of going to the Olympics were 180 million to 1. And so I defied the odds, I guess, with good help, but that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the fact that um, what I learned from this experience with my daughter was invaluable to me, that maybe I'll share with you some of the things that I learned. I learned first and foremost is that you can love anybody. You don't need a special reason to do it. You just decide that you're going to do it, and you do it. There doesn't in you know, to do it without any reciprocity or any bartering, because it's like I never, with my daughter, it was not a contingency how I was going to show up. I didn't barter with God like, look, I'll do this if you give me that. Can we make a deal here? I don't do that. It's like you do what has to get done, and whatever it is, it is. And if there's no change in my life, but there's a change in hers, that's okay too, because I'm not doing this to get a brownie button or to get any level of approval. You just got to kind of finish the job. And so that was really pivotal to me. And so part of that is that you always have to have an inherent trust in the process that it's going to find its way forward. And you got to do everything that you have to do at the moment without holding anything back. If you hold anything back that you need to do now for later, then don't plan on getting to where you want to go, because you're not going to get there. So there has to be a level of trust and process that you have to adhere to maintain your sanity and keep moving. No deals, no bartering,
Mm.
and I also learned, in this process, as well, that you have to, um, you always have enough energy to do anything on behalf of another person. Where energy gets sparse is where it's all in our own self-interest, as is our frustration. When we're not getting what we want fast enough, we get frustrated, but that's showcasing self and getting for self and for self reasons only. That's where energy becomes a different commodity, where when you do something on behalf of someone else because you really care about it and you're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done, you're always going to have enough energy to be able to do that. And I experienced that. And I also experienced that unless you face something so difficult, so long, you cannot find a deeper sense of self capacity that's begging its way to the surface to manifest the best you. Because when life is too good, you don't ask a series of questions that takes you deep enough to get there. Therefore, your life quality and your contribution will be compromised in some way. So it's like a rite of passage that's necessary to get to what will be our best work, like on the other side of that, which I know to be true. And you learn that you don't need as much as you think that you do. You can do without a lot. Like, and I can honestly tell you, I could sleep in a corner in a cot of a small room and I'd be happy, because at least I have the ability to live an effectual life of impact and support and of service to others. So the other stuff that we think that we need, we don't really need it. We just think that we do, but we really don't. So there's a
Mhm.
kind of moment of truth that's inherent in that. I also learned that you better decide, the most important decision you can make is how you're going to show up every day. You got to decide it, because how you show up does make a difference. And I know that because had people shown up differently for my daughter, she wouldn't have the scarring that she may not be able to outrun. It's still a work in progress. And she didn't ask for that. She didn't ask for any of that. People imposed it on her. And I just feel like, our private life, to work our way out of our humanness, is our own private business, that we shouldn't make part of what we do and how we interact with other people. And of course, speaking to the human champion mindset side of this, people will say, well, that's just me. That's who I am. We've all heard people say that. I'm just an
Yeah.
overreactive empath. That's just the way it is. I didn't ask for it. No, hold on a second. That's really the human nature, you reacting, that you've identified with you as you. That's not you. That's your imposter you, because the real you isn't going to act like that. And you know it, because you don't want to be like that, but you believe that that's you. It's not true.
Mhm.
And so with us as people, to me, you have to show up as pristine as possible and to give everybody your best work every day, to be an encouragement to call them to a higher game. Because to me, life is hard enough just living it by yourself. You get more than 0 people in a room and it's trouble, just because you got human nature involved in it. So so just don't have that right to do that. And
Right.
to me, in the morning, you have to make that decision.
Mm.
Am I going to show up and make everybody pay for the life I wish I had, but I don't? Or am I going to show up and work that out on my own and be the person that they need to have as a life option, and perhaps a case study to follow and emulate?
Mm.
I think, also that, um, maybe I'm not going to say the most important, but maybe so, but I learned that you must always hold space for a miracle. Always. You must always hold a little bit of space for a miracle, even though it may not seem possible. Don't decide on that. Just always hold space for it, because I can honestly tell you that, 9 years and 9 months, and all of a sudden my wife stopped crying, because there was a change in my daughter. There was a cumulative effect that eventually manifested itself,
Yeah.
where she came home one day, she put her books on the table, she sat down, opened the books, and studied. And she was now on the dean's list legitimately, not because she was a ringleader that could make things happen that weren't real in high school, you know?
That's the champion, man. It's like,
Yeah.
which day was it that made her study? Not it
That's
was not any one day. It was
right.
accumulation
Right.
of that every day,
Right.
that daily grind. Output
Right.
doesn't match effort, but
Right.
it's
Right.
accumulation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting though that in the champions, the goal achievement roadmap, that the promise of the daily grind is belief.
Mm,
Eventually you wake up one day and the miracle's there where you believe you can do it. And for us was that, moment when she was able to graduate, with honors from junior college. High school was one milestone because nobody in her family ever graduated from elementary school. I mean, imagine that. Elementary school, didn't even go. No reason to. But there are
yeah.
some other things as well that are very, very tragic that we won't talk about. But just to say that, you hold on to the potential and possibility of a miracle, and you just keep showing up and putting one foot in front of the other, and you remain steadfast to that which you know to be true, that's been revealed to your conscious awareness and deep-seated sense of belief and knowing. If you hang on to that, because sometimes that's all you got. You don't have a lot of evidence, but if you do have a knowing and you stay vigilant to that, and you apply through that, that's really almost a premonition of miracle that just isn't here yet, but eventually it will. And I also learned that there's nothing that could take you out of the game except us. If we give up or we misinterpret what it is, there's always a path to get there. And so in summary, that's truly the crowning experience of my entire life, was that. And we adopted when I was 58. People thought I was absolutely crazy and out of my mind at the height of my career, but I think what's more important is that you kind of have to answer to your truth and how you showed up, and did you answer the call, or did you play it safe and chicken out? I mean, we all
Mm,
have this kind of
yeah.
criteria that we're accountable to at some point. And here I am on the other side of this, and another year in school, and it's crazy. She is doing summer school. She works two
It's
jobs. And let me say
incredible.
one other thing, if I can, is that
Yeah.
I told my daughter when we adopted her, two things I like to say here is that um, I said, and she could barely even understand English. I think she understood my vibration more than my language. And I said,
Mhm.
I have a couple of nicknames for her. One's Kid, the other's Chiquita. You know, I said, Chiquita, here's my promise to you, is that you're always going to have enough to eat, because she didn't have enough to eat in Colombia. So much so that when she had hunger pains, she told me that she'd pick up gum off the bottom of seats and chew the gum
Oh my
so
God.
she wouldn't have to have hunger pains. And when she couldn't get it from under seats, she picked it up off the road and ate it, you know? And
Awesome.
so
Mm,
um, when she told me that, I just wanted to assure you that you're always going to have enough to eat, because that's all she could think about with her little dissumbed parasitic ridden body and her big little abdomen there.
mhm,
Just said, don't worry about it. You're always going to have to eat. And I told her that I'm never going to let you down, because her country let her down. Her family, everybody, friends, everybody let her down, man.
mhm.
She was raised as an animal, and raised as a criminal, a thief, a liar, and a cheat. That's how she was raised. And as I told her, I said, your mentors would be very proud of your skill, because she was as clever as they come. Trust me.
Mhm.
But the third thing that I said to her is, I said, look, even though you've had it tough, and if there's anybody that deserves a break in this world, it's you. But you got to know something here. You got to earn your place on the team. No free passes. It could have ruined her, man. So scrubbing the floor and doing all the stuff that we all did as a family, no exemptions from that. And then when she left to go to school every day before she even understood English, I said, don't be average, because I wanted to start to convert her neurology and get used to the don't be average. And we needed to start to break the cycle now, even though she didn't understand what I was even saying. And that was the most effective choice of words that I found had a key resonance with her.
Mhm.
And to me, those are some of the key things that it certainly kept her in the game, but it also kept us in the game as well.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
had we not had the roadmap, I don't know what we would have done. Is it the right goal? Yeah. Why? Because you're saving a human life, and you're also manifesting a destiny. Step number 2, motives. Why are you doing this? Well, we're doing this again to honor the privilege of being the parents to someone. And there's 138 million kids on this planet that have no home. Uh, is that important enough? Of course, for us, it was. Uh, Step number 3, impact. What's the impact of this on us? We would have showed up for duty and have been of service as called to. What's the benefit to her? The chance to manifest her greatness and to showcase the story to other Colombians and other people on what you can do that you don't think is possible or you've never considered. The value of the legacy on this for us is, well, we showed up for duty and we did the job unconditionally. How did it affect the world around us? Well, it was low carbon footprint, so there, was no impact on global warming. Just to paraphrase this in sort of a humorous way.
Mm.
Mindset, we adjusted to whatever it was. But I can only tell you this, is that had we come at this from our human mindset, we would have never been able to make it even a year, because the fastidiousness that was required to stay in the game, you had to have a champion's mind where you're not going to crack under any given set of circumstances, that gave us the courage to do what had to go right to keep us all in the game. Did we have the resources? Yeah, we had enough to do it. She had her own room for the first time in her entire life, rather than sleeping on a cement floor with a blanket, and a pillow, with a roof overhead rather than a cracked roof where all the rain came in and soaked her every night. She had a warm shower. I never had a warm shower. So, we had the resources to, care for her in a way that she deserved to be cared for from our perspective. And, you know, uh, what better use of resources is there to support another individual? So with all that, then we began the journey. Um, what was our first milestone? Well, we needed to arrive in Colombia. So our first start, we need to get on the plane and arrive in Colombia, which we did. Then we got into honeymoon phase. We met her for the first time, step 7. It was just glorious to see this little kid, but she only came up to my mid chest because her growth was stunted because of severe malnutrition for 10 years. It's like, you're kidding me. She's 10 and she's that short. Oh my gosh. Weighed 60 pounds, I think. And so then once the honeymoon wore off and we realized, this is going to be difficult. We have to do a reality check here, because we're going to have to recalibrate. 90% of my work and income has got to go. I'm going to be here as dad, which it did. Then there was the daily grind. So that was 9 years and 9 months. But I knew how to stay in the game because we had the roadmap and we knew the promise. You're going to wake up one day believing you could do it. And then step number 9, where we go from believing we can do it to knowing we can do it, we needed a breakout. When she graduated with honors from junior college, where she couldn't cheat any longer, then we knew it was for real. Then we needed to finish the job. And she's doing that like right now. She's working 2 jobs and she's, hustling, and she's just a great kid. And now 21, not so much a kid, but, I know that she's going to get to the finish line where she can then start to manifest her own life in her own way.
Mm-hmm.
So had we not had the roadmap, it would have been very difficult to keep track of where we are, because if you rely on how you feel to be your indicators of progress,
Such
man,
an non-specific, poor indicator in all round.
bad
Pain is
idea.
such a pain is never the thing you should pay attention to.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
goes for if you're a patient in a chiropractor's office,
Yeah.
or you are, adopting a child from Colombia. Like that is such a
Yeah.
non-specific. Yeah.
But yet a default that human nature cherishes as the ultimate
Yeah.
criteria. So again,
Yeah.
human nature tricks us into something that can't get us to where we want to go. So that's the story.
There's so many beautiful parallels there too. Like you're saying 9 years and 9 months. And earlier in our conversation, you're like, it took me about 10 years to get to the Olympics. It's about the same thing.
Yeah.
And your father, not being able to have a father who was able to bring out the best in you. You're lucky to have a surrogate in some of your mentors, but now you're able to bring that full circle and be the father
Yeah.
that you never had to your
It's
baby
true.
girl, to your girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 69 now. I just turned 69. And it's like, I don't know what that's supposed to feel or look like, but I do feel, having been through a complete passive life now, I can really look at it for what it is and uh, see the um, points of distinction that we need to be mindful of as we go through the different decades of our life to make sure that we're on track and that we're not ahead of ourselves or behind, and that we're always looking at ourselves through the eyes of the mythology of the human mindset versus the champion, so that our aspirations are real and they represent us. And probably in closing here, just to say that, there's only one of us in all of creation. And I think about that a lot. There's no Stephanie, there's no second Jeff. There's only a first of everybody. And, kind of knowing that, it's important that we provide an environment for people to explore that fully, to experience what I experienced as an Olympian, our full potential, to give our best back to humanity and to add a positive bent to a world gone crazy. I think it's a really an important aspiration, for us, and that we're not trapped into a world of comparison. That's where our human nature wants to take us. But if we look at our distinctions and our uniqueness and those things that we're curious about and build a life on that, and we have a map and some mentorship to guide us forward, then we have the greatest security that we'll be able to manifest that life that we can turn our back on at the end and say, there's nothing more that I could have done to make this any better. And it's like, that's how I feel with our daughter right now. I don't think there's one more thing that we could have done to influence her more than we did. And right now I'm very happy and proud to say that, because of the vigilance that it took to stay in the game. And the reward, speaks for itself.
I am so blessed to know you. I feel so blessed to know you. You are the perfect blend of frameworks, pragmatism, linear thought, and the divine, and holding space for mir. I mean, it is just your wisdom is, I just bow down to you. I mean, thank you so much for everything you've shared today. Thank you so much for your honesty and your transparency and your openness. I mean, thank you.
Well, it's
Thank
my
you.
pleasure, and a little bit of channeling goes a long way as well.
Mhm.
So again, we all have a story to tell, and I would say that, whatever our story is, we own that space, and that should be the platform by which we share with others without any apology what we believe to be true, to be able to shortcut their life. And to me, that's its own reason for being. So, I want to say, thank you, Stephanie, for your continued friendship and loyalty, and with great pride to been able to observe, you moving through these massive uh, periods of life, contribution to yourself and others. It's just been extraordinary to see. So thanks for the privilege.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate that. Dr. Stephen Gundry is the video that's coming up next for you. Just click right here. We're talking about the microbiome, energy, postbiotics, mitochondria, and how to get your energy back.
Continuous ketosis, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, is really dumb.